going to get ready to start, folks. We're going to start. If I could have your attention. Thank you so very much. Thank you. What a great turnout today. My name is Tim Yeager, and I have the great privilege of serving here at Concordia University as Executive Vice President for University Advancement. And I have served at this institution for almost 17 years, and I love it every day that I come up this hill and through this gate. And I love it for lots of reasons, but primarily I love it for the students. Today I'm thrilled you're here. How many of you are here for the very first time? Raise your hand.
Wow.
And how many of you have been here before? About half and half, actually. And that's one of the reasons we love having these events, because we get a chance to also expose our campus to more and more people. And so once again, to those of you that are here for the first time, welcome. To those of you that have been here before, thanks for coming back. I bring greetings today from our president, Kurt Krieger, who is in Washington, D.C., and our executive vice president and new dean of our School of Business, Stephen Christensen, who is in New York City. Both of those gentlemen would have loved to have been here, but they are not here with us, and I bring their greetings. Concordia University, since its founding, has been committed to faithfulness and excellence. And also, the university opened up in 1976 with 36 students, and today, between our undergraduate and graduate programs, has over 4,000 students. We are grateful for that blessing, and through all of that time, we have remained committed to the Great Commission of Jesus Christ, where it says in Matthew, to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that remains our charge today. We are thrilled to host these business breakfast series. We're thrilled to do this, and we're glad to have you here. I would like to ask that everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing, actually, and join me in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, you have blessed us with so much, and for that we are thankful. We're thankful for a new morning that, while foggy, is warm in comparison to lots of the world, and certainly our country. Lord, we ask that you bless our morning, you bless our speaker. We're grateful for this topic, and we're grateful for all the people that have come to be with us today. Bless the food and our fellowship in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be seated. At this time, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce a professor in our School of Business who specializes in marketing. Her name is Carolyn Shirey, and before I bring her up, I would like to reference the fact that she has led 2 award-winning marketing teams back in St. Louis to win a national award, and so grateful for her work in that. And also, that's part of the Institute of Strategic Marketing and Management. Carolyn has also provided consulting for various companies. Carolyn Shirey will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Tim. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
You can do better than that. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, there we go. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to have Denise Yohn speak today. I have to say, I didn't really start being a professor. I started in corporate America, so I have about 30 years of marketing experience, and I have to tell you, I really enjoy it when we have speakers that have the same kind of a background. She's got 25 years of marketing and advertising experience. She's worked both on the agency side and the client side, the business side, and she's had clients such as Land Rover and Jamba Juice and Frito-Lay and Burger King and Jack in the Box. So she's got some really nice business-to-business and also business-to-consumer experience. And as she actually that took her on a journey, and she ended up as the VP of Branding and Strategy for Sony Corporation. So the lady's got some chomps, and she knows what she's talking about. As you know, in fact, George, can you hand me your book real quick? As you know, she's here because she's introducing this book. And I have to tell you, this is a really good book. I know a little bit about marketing and branding, and everything I read in there hits home. And actually, that's kind of why we're here. You're here because you have businesses and you want to be successful, and you want to know how to do that in the changing environment that we're in. And I really do think the information that she has is going to help us. I'm using this. I am going to use this in my marketing and my advertising classes. So I am absolutely thrilled, and it is an honor to introduce Denise Lee Yohn.
Carolyn, I should hire you as my PR agent. Thank you. All right, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. All right, okay. I love to run. I may be the slowest runner, but I love running. I've been running for about 25 years or so. And the only brand of shoes that I will wear when running are Nikes. 25 years, turtle's pace. Nike shoes. What has Nike done to inspire this kind of loyalty? How has Nike seduced me? Well, I kind of thought about it, and at first I thought, well, maybe it's because of the kind of innovative technology that Nike puts in its shoes. But honestly, I kind of buy one of the lower end models of Nike, so I'm not getting the benefit of the triple fly wire, lunar glide mesh, blah, blah, blah technology, right? So then I thought, well, maybe it's because Nike has all those cool celebrity endorsements. And they have some great endorsements, Rory McIlroy, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. But last year when that whole thing happened with Lance Armstrong, I kind of realized that I don't really care who else wears Nike shoes. The only person that I care about is me, right? It's all about me. And that's what Nike does. They understand that it's all about me. They understand me. They understand why I run. They understand how I feel when I run. They get me, or they get the me that I want to be. That's how Nike has seduced me. So I kind of started thinking about it even more, and I thought, well, I wonder if other brands have a similar influence on me and people like me. And if they do, how and why? That's what led me to what great brands do. So I looked at a range of great brands, some of the world's greatest brands, Apple, Starbucks, Amazon, Zappos. I also looked at some smaller companies that were developing really great brands like Chobani yogurt or Method products or even Shake Shack. And what I discovered is that these brands have several things in common. The first is that they all enjoy higher profit margins than the average of their categories. People are willing to pay more for products from these brands. They also enjoy energized differentiation, which is a term that the ad agency Y&R's Brand Asset Valuator uses to describe a brand's dynamism, vision, and invention based on consumer surveys. And these great brands also tend to be at the top of those, kind of those lists like the Interbrands Best Global Brands Report or 100 Best Places to Work. But what I found beneath those metrics that speak to the greatness of these brands, I found a crucial common underpinning that these brands shared. These brands think about and do brand building differently. They conceive of their brands as complete strategic platforms that they use in their business. instead of using their brands or thinking about their brands as a kind of an external message to promote, they're actually conceiving of, or they're actually using their brands as complete management tools that they use to fuel, align, and guide everything that they do. And they operationalize their brands as the most critical way of managing and growing their business. Now, I found that this approach, this kind of complete management approach, is not very common. In fact, according to a survey that was done by the Association of National Advertisers, they surveyed chief marketing officers and brand directors. And 64% of them said that the brands do not influence business decisions at their companies. 64%. So that means at, let's say, nearly two-thirds of all companies, the brands are not aligned. So they're communicating, they're pouring millions of dollars into advertising and marketing and communicating their brands, but those aren't aligned with the business strategies of their companies. And as a result, the brand building ends up being kind of a discrete, subjective exercise for marketing, as opposed to a core driver of the business. And the full business value of the brand, therefore, goes unrealized. So how do great brands avoid this pitfall? I found in my research what I would consider to be some of the most defining, distinctive characteristics or principles that great brands live out. And so I'm going to share a few of them with you today. The first is that great brands start inside, meaning great brands start brand building inside. Here's what I mean. This man may be smiling now, but back in 2002, he was losing sleep. This is Sam Palmisano, and when he took the reins as CEO of IBM, he faced two formidable challenges. The first was that the company, which had traditionally been a computer hardware powerhouse, was now deriving the majority of its profits and revenue from services and software. And so he had to lead his organization to succeed in this new business model, and he had to set expectations, both internally and externally, for how they were going to do that. The second challenge is that he encountered a workforce that had somewhat bred a sense of entitlement and arrogance because IBM had been so big and so well respected for so long. So Sam could essentially feel the weight of this $81 billion company on his shoulders, not to mention his legacy as a business leader. So let me ask you, when you go to want to signal a change, a new direction for your company, I bet culture is not necessarily the first place that you would start. You know, probably the more common approach would be to overhaul your communication strategies. Let's put on a brand campaign, or let's do a really big PR push. And I think the reason why people normally go that direction is because it's easier to change what you say about yourself than to change yourself. And actually, a corporate image makeover is probably the fastest way to get the attention of shareholders and customers alike. So conventional wisdom would have suggested that that's where Sam started. But he, like other enlightened leaders, knew that unless he developed greatness among his employees, they were unlikely to deliver greatness to their customers. So Sam started inside. And he launched what he called a values jam. Basically, he leveraged IBM's communications network and their collaboration software to hold an online discussion about certain values themes for the organization. These were themes that had been identified in advance that Sam called things that defined who IBM was, what they stood for, what distinguished them, what their brand was. So for 72 hours, employees from around the world were invited to go online and participate in a digital discussion about IBM's values. And at the end of that weekend, over 50,000 employees had logged on, 10,000 comments were posted, and they applied IBM's filtering software to narrow down all the comments into 3 new interpretations of IBM's values. Now, Sam could hardly claim victory at that point. Again, everyone kind of has values, right? He needed to turn his attention to actually living up to those values. So he asked all of his direct reports to identify the gaps between what they said their values were and how they actually operated. And in very short order, they identified all sorts of policies and procedures that prevented people from living out their values. For example, one of the things is they had, they needed to get approval for even the smallest expenses. And so managers couldn't live out the value of being dedicated to every client's success because of that problem. So Sam launched a test where he gave his managers, each of his managers, $5,000 of kind of walking around money to solve customers' problems quickly. And when that test proved to be so successful, he rolled it out to all 22,000 of his frontline managers. Sam called that a $100 million bet on trust and a demonstration that IBM does indeed live by its values. Given that IBM is one of the biggest, most valuable brands today, I'd say that bet paid off, right? So the ability to execute on that kind of cultural alignment is what separates the best brands from the rest. So great brands use their brands to rally everyone who's working in the company around certain common values that then they translate into a unique, sustainable brand identity. Culture is the necessary first step when you want to define or redefine your brand, because culture is what determines whether your employees are going to embrace your brand and whether they are going to appropriately interpret and reinforce it to customers. So great brands use their brands to optimize their internal workings and rally everyone around so that they will then ultimately create sustainable, focused, unique customer experiences. So that's what I mean by great brands start inside. And one more comment that I want to make about great brands, about starting inside, is that usually starting inside means saving your communications efforts for later. Zappos is well known, kind of, if you do any kind of reading or studying in this world, they're very well known for fostering the strong corporate culture around delivering happiness. What is equally noteworthy is how little the company spends on advertising and marketing. Right? Think about it. You don't really see their ads very much, right? The CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, explains why he spends so much time and energy investing in customer experience and so little in advertising and marketing, saying that the telephone is the best branding device out there. We've got the customer on the line, their undivided attention for 5 to 10 minutes. If we get that interaction right, they will remember that for a very long time, and they'll tell their friends, so they'll do our marketing for us. Zappos, like other great brands, know that until and unless your culture is clearly expressed through the customer experience, you really don't have anything worth communicating. Great brands start inside. When you start brand building with communications, you are merely expressing your brand. Great brands execute their brands. They execute on those strong cultural foundations in every aspect of their business. And the principles they follow in executing are somewhat surprising. One of the principles that I found was when I started to look into a brand like Starbucks. And as I researched, what I discovered is that Starbucks really isn't just selling coffee. American Express isn't just selling credit cards. And Apple isn't just selling gadgets. What each of these brands offers, in these cases, let's see, community, significance, life enhancement, those things are far more meaningful and valuable than the products themselves. Just like Nike offers something that's far more meaningful and valuable than shoes. So here's how I discovered that great brands like Nike avoid selling products. I knew that "Just Do It" was one of the most well-known taglines of all time. What I didn't know is how close Nike came to never using it. You see, back in the 80s, the CEO of Nike at the time, Phil Knight, commissioned his advertising agency to create an advertising campaign to celebrate Nike's role in fueling the jogging craze that had been sweeping across America. So the agency shot these gorgeous TV spots. They were shot on the campus of University of Oregon, where Nike's first shoes were developed. Beautiful vistas, pictures of famous runners, and there was a voiceover that intoned, "The fitness revolution that changed America. It started here." Okay, the spots were meant to be stunning and provocative, and they were when they were previewed in front of Nike's sales managers at a national meeting. The spots were met with reverential silence. And that was not the inspired, enthusiastic response that Phil Knight had been looking for. So he sent the agency back to the drawing board. And the chief marketing officer at Nike at the time, Scott Bedbury, said, "You know, the problem with those ads is that they were about Nike. They weren't about our customers. It was probably the best example of corporate navel-gazing that ever existed." So 2 weeks later, the agency came back, armed with a memo from Bedbury that instructed them to widen the access point to their brand. And they showed a series of commercials that showed people, athletes, doing what athletes do: running, jumping, squatting, straining, grunting, whatever. There was a female triathlete. There was an 80-year-old long-distance runner, a pro basketballer. Each of them spoke with great emotion about what they do and why they do it. And at the end, the spots ended with those 3 words, "Just do it." Scott Bedbury observed that "Just Do It" was not about sneakers. It was about values. It wasn't about selling products. It was about communicating a brand ethos. Just Do It, that campaign ran for 10 solid years, and is the prime example of how seducing through emotion trumps pushing products. Instead of promoting Nike's great innovation and technology and performance, those spots allowed real people to speak with great emotion about the emotional rewards of what they did. And never once did they mention Nike. And yet, after the campaign ran, Nike's business really took off. And the company heard from people that said, those 3 words, "Just do it," that inspired me. It inspired me to get fit. It inspired me to leave a bad relationship. It inspired me to quit my job. To this day, "Just Do It" retains such a cultural resonance that people get tattoos that say "Just Do It." How many other brands that are tattoo worthy like that? So, the lesson here is that Nike is an innovative company. But probably it would be fair to say that Nike's competitors are just as innovative. Nike's brand success comes from its consistent use of experiences and communication that inspire people to feel like athletes. Nike knows that people make product decisions based on how those products make them feel, or the identities that those products enable them to experience or to express. And product features are of secondary importance or only serve to support that emotional connection. So that's what I mean by great brands avoid selling products. Now, so far I've been kind of talking about the overarching strategies that great brands employ, but what my research showed me is that great brands do brand building differently, not only in their high-level strategies, but also in their detailed execution. Great brands sweat the small stuff. They may think big, but they sweat the small stuff. They know that every interaction that someone has with their brand is an occasion to improve and enhance their brand image or detract and diminish it. And so they design their brand experiences down to the very details, often appealing to as many senses as possible, because they know that that's the way, that'll make an impression that is far more impactful, sustainable, memorable than any ad campaign ever could. Every touch point communicates, every communication matters. Sweating the small stuff is what enabled Chobani Yogurt to become the #1 yogurt brand in only 3 years. In my research, I read about the CEO and founder of Chobani, Hamdi Ulukaya, who discovered that after developing his product, he didn't have any money to advertise. So he knew that he was going to have to make a strong impression on the shelves of the grocery stores. So he set about making his packaging using his packaging as a symbol for how special the product was inside. So he decided to use a different size and shape of yogurt cup. So it was kind of shorter and squatter. It looked different than most of other yogurts. And he insisted on using shrunken-on sleeves as labels for his yogurt, as opposed to the standard kind of screened-on method that most yogurt companies used, because that would allow the colors to pop more and to make the product seem more unique and special. And Hamdi says, people say, it's yogurt, who cares? But I believe that there's great emotion to it. There's an experience of opening the yogurt and of eating it. That's why I pay attention to every single detail. And while Hamdi was focused on the visual aspects, sweating the small stuff in the visual aspects of his brand, the folks at Starwood Hotels were focused on sweating the small stuff in the smell of their brands. They developed patented smells for every hotel brand in their portfolio. So like Westin has their white tea linen scent, and they created a signature scent for their W hotels. The CEO at the time that this program was launched, Stephen Heyer, explained that this patented signature smell was part of an overall comprehensive effort that they undertook to connect emotionally with their customers, because they wanted to influence their purchase decisions and inspire their brand loyalty. And ultimately, they saw that that turned into higher RevPAR, which is their industry's key metric, square footage growth, and return on capital invested. Perhaps the most comprehensive effort of sweating the small stuff that I found was by REI, the retailer of outdoor sporting goods. The culture at REI believes that in not leaving any detail of the brand experience unattended. The brand mission for REI is about bringing the excitement and the adventure of the outdoors to customers. So they design every aspect of their store experience to bring that mission to their customers. From the way the stores are designed and laid out, to the materials that they use in the fixtures in their stores, the signage and the graphics, the kinds of people that they hire, what the people wear, the products that they offer, even the ice pick door handles that you use when you walk into the store. All of that signals this adventure and excitement of the outdoors. And then the managers of the stores use a brand management strategy and customer acquisition strategies that ensure that their strategies are executed consistently across all of their stores. And then they extend that online, in their catalogs, in their emails. Everything about what they do is designed to express the brand vision and mission of the outdoors. And they had to overcome some pretty serious organizational silos to ensure a seamless customer experience across those channels. So you as a customer, if you buy something online and then go to pick it up in the store, they wanted to make sure that you would have a seamless journey that took you into that brand mission all the way throughout. And the vice president, Kevin Hagan at REI, says, some companies work really hard at this kind of stuff, but our advantage comes from our core as a mission-driven organization. So that's how REI sweats the small stuff. And what I found is that this attention to customer experience is not very common. What's more likely is that business leaders underestimate the importance of customer experience. There was a study done by Profit, a management consulting firm, and they found that only 13% of executives pointed to customer experience as the key driver of future brand equity, whereas 39%, so 3 times that number, pointed to a specific product or service. So again, that means that there's so many people who are misunderstanding or underestimating the importance of the brand experience and every detail in it. But not great brands. They sweat the small stuff. The last principle that I want to share with you is, again, one that was kind of surprising to me in my research. I came across it when I found companies like this one that normally makes turbine engines and trains, but they were talking about Mother Nature. It also occurred to me when I saw an apparel retailer telling people not to buy their products, and a restaurant chain doing something to address the recession other than just cutting their prices. There seemed to be this kind of new movement in this area that's traditionally known as corporate social responsibility. These brands were not doing things that were about giving back and then feeling good about themselves. They were doing things that really didn't seem to have very much to do with giving back at all. They were actually seeming to say, we don't have to give back. Here's what I mean. Patagonia, the outdoor outfitter. Their mission is to make the best product, do no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. So Patagonia has something called the Footprint Chronicles, which documents for every product Patagonia makes how it was developed from the raw materials all the way through the supply chain, distribution, manufacturing, et cetera, to when the customer buys the product. So Footprint Chronicles provides a great window for people like us outside the company to look in and say, is Patagonia really living by their mission? And then we can judge whether we want to do business with them or not. And consumers really value that because they only want to do business with companies that operate with authenticity and transparency. So Footprint Chronicles creates value for consumers. It also creates value for people inside the company because now they have a focus and they have a way of aligning all their efforts because the company's made it a corporate priority. They've made a public commitment to this. So everyone's moving in the same direction. Footprint Chronicles it creates value for shareholders because it's driven Patagonia to develop a more sustainable supply chain and more efficient manufacturing processes. And it's good for the environment. It reduces the company's impact on the environment. So what Patagonia is doing is not CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's CSV, creating shared value. They're doing things in their business that create value for everyone who's involved in the organization. And Footprint Chronicles is only one example of the many ways that Patagonia is doing this. They're constantly exploring their cultural and societal relevance in order to identify new ways to create shared value. And because they create shared value, they never have to give back. You know, there's nothing wrong with giving back, so please don't misunderstand me. But great brands seem to be asking themselves, why merely do good when we could actually be great? And so they're redesigning their business models, re-examining their supply chains, rethinking what they sell and how they sell it. They're shifting their thinking about this, about making a positive impact from an obligation, something they're kind of expected to do. Any respectable business would do CSR. To an opportunity, or opportunities, I should say, things they want to do because it does create value for everyone who's involved with their business. And they've shifted their decision filters about what things to do and what not to do from thinking about them as responsibilities to do, like let's make a list of things that we can then check off that we've accomplished them, to achieving relevance, ways to deepen and sustain a connection that they have with all the different groups of people that are involved with Patagonia or with any other brand. So that's what I mean by great brands never have to give back. So those are 4 principles that define great brand building. They are the brand building principles that separate the best from the rest. Now, there are actually a few more principles that I didn't have time to share with you today, but they are in my book, and I'd encourage you to take a look at that. But one thing I want to make sure that I haven't done, by presenting this kind of list of principles, I don't want to give you the impression that this is a list of kind of attractive optional measures that you can kind of pick and choose from, kind of like a Chinese menu. What I discovered in researching great brands is that these principles are really part of an integrated, indivisible whole. And great brands implement all of them so that it's this kind of a cohesive management approach so that they get the power out of all of them. But all of this has led me to conclude that we would be wrong to believe that great brands got to be so successful because of good timing, creative advertising, just plain luck. If you look at the brands that I did and research them the way that I did, what you find is that great brands have employed specific techniques that have elevated brand building from a niche marketing function to the core driver of their business. Mm-hmm. And that's what's turned them into industry icons. So I have one more comment that I will make at the end, but I know I've been doing a lot of talking, and I thought this might be a good opportunity to allow you to make some comments or ask questions. So does anyone have something they want to share or ask? Yes?
In the city of San Francisco, the most interesting and unusual marketing crisis seems to have occurred involving those companies that pick up their employees in big comfortable buses in the middle of the city, drive them to workplaces in Silicon Valley. What's unusual about it is the crisis emanates from corporate profit and plentiful jobs, because that's driving up rents within the city, and I think using 2 words that you've used, I think that some of the everyday people are seeing these buses and seeing people that seem entitled, seem arrogant, and it gets to never giving back. If you were marketing to some of those companies that are driving those buses through the city that are getting pelted by unhappy citizens, what would be your solution?
Wow. I just read about that the other day, and apparently, so there are these protests of people. So I don't know if you know what you're talking about, but the Googles and the Apples and Facebooks of the world, they have these huge buses that pull up in San Francisco, and the little worker bees get on board, and the buses have like refreshments, they have Wi-Fi, they're like these plush coach buses, and they drive them down to the valley where they work, and then they come back. And apparently, most recently, people have been protesting and trying to stop these buses.
Big bad corporate.
I don't know. I think that, to be honest, I think that when a company, develops a reputation for not caring about its community or not caring about the impact that it's making on the environment, or, not being responsible, it's very easy to then point to something like these buses and say, look, there's the perfect example of an uncaring, unresponsible company, right? But I would argue that a brand like Apple has actually created enough or has accumulated enough positive equity in the way that they have really transformed our lives. Think about 10 years ago, no iPhones, no iPads, no iPods. Apple has done remarkable things for us as a culture. And I'm saying this as a PC user. My husband's a Mac user, and he's always railing on PC. But as a brand person, I have to say that Apple has done a phenomenal job of creating value for our culture that everyone appreciates. And so I think that what I would do is I would lean into those values, into a message that really reinforces that, and not draw attention to the specific practice that we have of shipping our employees in buses. I don't know. Yeah.
Can't they spin that and say how much emissions they're saving by taking these many cars off the road?
Yeah.
And reducing commute times for everybody.
Yeah, they could, or they could say that we're treating our workers really well. We know that they work hard and they invest all their lives, so we're doing something to give back to them. The only problem with something like that is it tends to sound like you're trying to distract people, like pay no attention to what we're doing, and so I probably wouldn't draw attention to it. I'd rather stay. I think I'd rather stay focused on the bigger message of what Apple's doing as a brand as a whole. Yes?
If I understood some of your presentation correctly, the great brands are actually moving away from spinning because they're
Yes.
actually creating a culture of transparency. So there's no need to spin. This is who we are.
Right. Yes. So you don't see Apple saying, well, look at all these great things we've done, or whatever, And actually, Apple doesn't do these like charitable things or whatever, because I believe that they believe that they have been creating value, and if they just allow people to see that, people will value that. So yes, exactly. What other questions are? Yes.
Just a comment. So you mentioned Patagonia. Probably 20 years ago, I saw an ad for the a new CEO for Patagonia, and it had nothing to do with business experience. It said something about, can you climb 5'10"? Are you a kayaker? Do you love hanging off the side of cliffs? All that type of stuff. And it was kind of like I was reading through that, and I thought, now that's going to be and is a great company.
Yeah.
Because they really understood who they wanted to be.
Sure. And that's just like their catalogs. So I don't know if you've seen Patagonia's catalogs, but they're like 75% of the content in there are just beautiful pictures and stories about people using their products. And then, oh, by the way, this dude is wearing these pants or using these crampons or whatever. But it's exactly that. They know that connecting emotionally, or like having people that understand what it feels like to be hanging off the side of a mountain or to be surfing the greatest wave that you've ever surfed, having people like that in the company to then produce products is far more effective than really trying to push the product feature or the product attributes. So, exactly. Yes?
And you're not selling the product. Patagonia, I recently watched a video on YouTube, I believe, that was the longest products Patagonia's had or something. This guy had a pair of board shorts for 20 years. He got them in Australia, he went around, he patched them, and they're going, yeah, buy the last pair of board shorts you're ever going to buy because they're the best out there.
Yes.
And they didn't actually say that, but the video said it for them
Mm-hmm.
from the customer's perspective.
Yes.
They didn't have to sell it. The customer sold it for them.
Yes, exactly. And actually, I think that's a mark of great brands is when your customers do the marketing for you, when they actually create commercials for you because they have something that they want to say about your brand. Absolutely. Yes?
So do you have a roadmap or a series of steps that a company can go through to figure out what those values are and then build them through their organization?
Right. So the question was, is there a roadmap or a series of steps that you can use to build a great brand? And there's a starting point, which is you do need to start with your values and your brand essence. So what do you believe in at your core? What is your purpose? What are your values? And then you build your brand from there. But without sounding self-serving, in my book, there are specific tools and methods and processes that I've used with my clients to help them actually do things like that. So, yes. There was a guy in the back that I want to make sure I get, and then I'll get you all. Yes?
Hi, my name's Matt Karam. I'm a marketing major here at Concordia.
Thank you for introducing yourself. That's a great practice, by the way, just students, just so you know. Okay, yes.
Way to go.
I just had a question. With your experience in branding and companies, I was wondering what industries are good for marketing majors in Southern California.
Yeah. Well, automotive is quite big here, right? And there are some packaged goods. I don't know. I'm seeing a lot more, technology brands coming down here and technology startups, I should say, specifically in digital health and fitness and mobile health and healthcare. Those are the kinds of companies that I think are really going to make an impact on our lives going forward. We are all very interested in living longer, healthier lives and enjoying our lives more. And I think that the technologies that are coming out that help us do that are the ones that are really going to take off. So, there's kind of, what is it now? Instead of Silicon Alley, there's Silicon Beach and things like that. I think that you're seeing more of that movement down here. If I were a student, that's the kind of company that I'd want to get involved with. Yes?
Going back to his question about maybe starting to build that brand, in your
Yes.
example with IBM, you had mentioned that they were really researching and understanding their values, held that webinar. Did they take research from what consumers were envisioning and then also inside? So is it a balance of, so if I work for like a smaller company, and so is it important for me to maybe survey and kind of see, well, what are people thinking now, and then what are we thinking inside and balancing that?
Yeah. So I think the fundamental question is, how do you use outside perspectives to shape what your values and your culture? And I always use this phrase that you want to be consumer or customer informed, but brand led. So consumer informed, brand led. The idea being that you want to understand what people outside your company think of you, what they value about you, how they see you different from other companies. But ultimately, you need to be driven and led by what you believe inside your company. You need to make the decision that this is what we stand for, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. So in IBM's case, my understanding is that before they went to that values jam online, they had done quite a bit of research to gather input, but then the values jam was all internal because they really felt like it needed to come from that internal place. Yes. Yes.
You mentioned REI. I think they're a wonderful company, but when you look at these great brands, I think in some ways, maybe in many ways, they are age neutral.
Age neutral.
Age
Okay.
neutral. At age 65, I went to REI and said, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. That guy was so excited for me. He said, you got to get this, you got to get that. I'm thinking, I've never done anything like this in my entire life. I don't have the faintest idea. He brings over some other guy and says, well, you got to get this kind of shit. He brings over somebody else. He couldn't have been happier for me. And I walked out and I thought, not only am I happy with the purchase, but I've got 3 people cheering for me to go do something I've never done, don't have a face study if I can succeed. And so
Yeah.
I felt that there was a partnership.
Wow.
They weren't worried about my age, they were worried about whether I had the right thing to go do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was a fabulous experience.
Yeah, that's terrific.
And
So
I
on,
need it, by the way.
yay!
Yay.
Yay! You can talk to my husband. He made it up to the summit also. So, I'll close with. I have a closing comment, but just one thing that I want to make an observation is that I think great brands tend not to define their target customers by age or by other demographic variables. It's a mindset, and it's a value, and it's an emotion, and it's a way of thinking and feeling. And so that's why I think that you're right. Most great brands are kind of age neutral, or they appeal to lots of different kinds of people, but it's because of something else you share, that you're very like-minded. So I know that other people have questions, but I'm going to wrap it up since I know some people also need to go. I do want to encourage you that there's a card here that everyone should have in front of them. If I didn't get to answer your question, you can write your question, and if you provide your contact information, I'll email you. There's some other ways, other information if you want from me. And then you can tear off this lovely thing here and carry these principles with you in your business card holder or your wallet. Okay? So the last thing that I want to say is that I realize that many brands out there are succeeding without following these principles. In fact, you may have a very successful business without following these principles, right? So the urgency to change may not seem all that great. But I would ask you what you might be leaving on the table by not fully operationalizing your brand. You know, are you pouring your time, money, and energy into marketing and advertising and logos and things like that when they tend to be notoriously unreliable? And you may be doing well, but are you really thriving? Or maybe you're just coasting with some favorable winds at your back. And are you really laying a strong foundation for the future? You know, what about tomorrow? If your brand isn't guiding what you do and how you do it, what is going to determine your direction when markets change suddenly, as markets tend to do? What happens if there's a crisis? Do you have a strong enough brand to withstand the threat of those negative forces? I talk about these principles with business leaders all over, and I find it ironic because the people who could benefit most from them are often the ones who are most resistant, because they're successful and profitable, and they seem to almost be blinded by their success. They take their brand advantage for granted. And then on the flip side, there are these troubled companies that are grasping at these principles and methods, but it's kind of too late. It's like a life raft that's too late. So I would suggest to you that the time to change is now, not because your company is sick, but precisely because it's healthy. Greatness doesn't just happen. Good is the enemy of great. So I hope that you will choose to be great.